Good to have you, sir.
Thank you, Chris.
So what does this letter do? What does the president saying, I don't think Mueller should testify, do to your sense of urgency to have him? And where are we on that becoming reality?
The committee's doing all it can to get Bob Mueller to testify before our committee, because the best evidence rule, which is universally accepted, and it would be the same here, is that the person with the most knowledge should be the one to testify. Bob Mueller has the most knowledge of the Mueller report and should tell the American public what it contains. As he said in his letter to Bill Barr, after his 3.5-page summary was known that it didn't correctly reflect the context or the meaning of his report. So he needs to come. I think that we're doing all we can. I don't know if it'll happen this month. We certainly hope it'll happen.
Why wouldn't it? Who can stop it?
Well, he's still an employee of the Justice Department. Being an employee of the Justice Department, they can stop it. And he is still an employee, and as I understand it, he's expected to be an employee for at least the end of this month. I'd suggest that he resign and be able then to be free to testify, although there'd be certain matters he could not testify to that were redacted and privileged, and I'm sure he would contour his testimony to what was permissible to be released to the public.
The AG has said that he had no objection to Mr. Mueller testifying, but of course, if the president has an objection, the AG may take that up as his proxy. We've seen that before. That takes us to item number 2. The Treasury Secretary, even though, look, it says secretary in the statute, but really you would think the IRS commissioner would be dealing with this request from Ways and Means. Nonetheless, the Treasury Secretary sent a letter to you guys today saying, no taxes, not a legitimate oversight exercise. Sorry, DOJ doesn't agree. Is that satisfying?
It's just stonewalling, and it's what the Trump administration will do. The statute clearly says that he shall turn them over when requested by the chair of the Ways and Means Committee. They can't reinterpret the statute. Only the courts can reinterpret the statute. Not that there's anything to reinterpret. It's a clear statement that the Treasury is supposed to turn it over. Trump has a lot he's hiding in his tax returns. He doesn't want the public to see his returns. He's lied about it for a long time. He lied when he said he was, I believe he lied, when he said he was under audit. But even if he was under audit, there was no reason for him not to release his returns. That's not a reason you would not release your returns. He learned taxes like he learned business to some extent from his father, Fred Trump. And the New York Times exposed well how Fred Trump saw the tax laws as a way to evade paying as much money as he could to the United States government. And when his sister resigned from the Court of Appeals in the Federal District Court up in New Jersey, it was because she was under investigation for the same fraudulent scheme that Donald Trump was beneficiary of, that his father pulled off to get around and take the tax loopholes that were available, and maybe some that weren't proper, but it's beyond the statute of limitations, to evade our tax laws and not to pay what he should have to fund the United States government.
Well, look, I don't know about what his father did.
So he's not going to release his taxes.
I don't know about his sister. He doesn't want to release his taxes. We know that. You're supposed to have an ability to get it. We'll see how that'll get litigated, which will get added to the list of things you're going to have to fight, seeing how he's in straight oppose mode. This is going to be a test of the strength of these subpoenas and the cause that underlies them. That takes us to Wednesday. Do you believe that the Attorney General is going to have a contempt vote coming his way?
I suspect he will, although there's been constant negotiations with the Judiciary Committee staff and Barr staff, and I think they've come to an agreement to meet on Tuesday and possibly try to work out an accommodation. If they can work out an accommodation and come to an agreement before Wednesday, that would probably stall a contempt vote.
What would an accommodation look like?
Mr. Nadler has... Well, the accommodation would be seeing the report, having more than Mr. Nadler, committee members see the report and be able to digest it and not have limitations put. But I'm just guessing. I don't know exactly what Mr. Nadler is asking. He's asked for the whole redacted report for the committee and for the Congress to see, and also for the underlying evidence. I'm not sure if what the considerations would be in an accommodation.
Well, it's good to hear the sides are talking. Hopefully there'll be some progress, not just process. So obviously he was supposed to show up. He didn't. You guys made a whole show of it. It was all over Saturday Night Live. We'll play it for some people here who didn't get to see it.
Just think about the poor intern who had to go find a KFC at dawn and order a 12-piece bucket and then be like, oh, no, it's for my boss. He's a congressman.
he's biting into leftover KFC, or as it's more commonly known, trash. And two, that means this adult man probably laid in bed all night thinking about how awesome his chicken joke was going to be, and he was completely wrong about that.
Oliver's way out of line going after KFC as not being tasty. But how do you feel about the rest of it?
Well, the New York Times properly described it as levity. The New York Times also used one of my quotations in my press conference as the quotation of the day on May the 2nd,
yeah, I saw
which
it.
is an honor, and I appreciate they did that. And I think the comedians are kind of off base. Sarah Silverman was probably right when she tweeted that it was a hat on a hat, that just the figurine, the ceramic figurine would have been sufficient. The bucket was probably a bit overboard. I shouldn't have eaten it. It didn't taste good, and it didn't picture well. But the fact is,
Wait a minute. What do you mean it didn't taste good? Which recipe was it? Was it original recipe?
Was
it extra crispy?
Recipe. It was cold, and so the skin was pretty awful.
All right,
but
that's it.
the things you do for the photographers, I guess that was a little mistake. But it was it was to bring out a point that he was chicken, and we got a hashtag out of it for Chicken Bar.
I got
and I
the
think
point.
people know that he was afraid to come. He want to face Barry Burke and Norm Eisen, and there's great precedent for counsel questioning witnesses, not in an impeachment hearing, which is what Collins talked about, but in hearings of all kind. Bobby Kennedy did it back in the days where Roy Cohn did it as well in the McCarthy hearings. In the 90s, Richard Benveniste and Chertoff did it in the Whitewater hearings. There have been lots and lots of cases. And then the Republicans brought in a lady to question Ms. Bloss in the Kavanaugh hearings.
Sure.
So there's plenty of precedent, and it would have been appropriate. The problem is not that we don't have really great members on our committee, which we do, but in 5 minutes, it's really tough to follow up, to have your questions, to have a person who's the witness who would filibuster, which they have. Whitaker did it.
There's a lot
Barr
of
did it in the
politics,
Senate,
though,
and
Congressman, also. There's a lot of people there just making a point. They're grandstanding sometimes. They don't even. Hirono had like some great substance to ask, but she just like made a statement in their hearing instead of asking.
Well, some people do
Barr
make
any of that
statements.
stuff. I mean,
You
obviously
have your
she's
option.
Senate,
You can
not
make a
House. But you know what
statement.
I'm
You can
saying.
ask questions.
I know, but I'm
But
just
it's
saying
tough to follow.
that clouds it sometimes. That's all I'm saying, Congressman.
But 5 minutes is tough to do it.
That's true.
I was a defense lawyer. You have 30 minutes you can crack a witness. And Barry Burke and Norm Eisen could crack this guy because there's so many holes in his statements and so many questions about his legal standing on his statements concerning the president's authority that it should have a 30-minute opportunity. I could take the 30. Jamie could take the 30. There are lots of people. Jerry Nadler could take the 30. Pramila could. There are lots of people on our committee given 30 minutes, but you can't give 20 people. Maybe everybody could. We've got great members.
Right.
But you can't give 20-some-odd people 30 minutes each or we'd be there forever.
Any regrets about the chicken and the antics and all of that was done? Not just by you, by the way.
I guess that I didn't eat during the statements. Number one regret is eating, number one. And number two, probably could have just brought the ceramic chicken. That would have been enough. And that's what was advised by Sarah, what's her name? Silverman?
Yes.
Sarah,
Silverman.
whatever, comedian, wrote me and said, yeah, she said it was a two-hatter. She's probably right. But then, I'm not a professional at that, and I probably should have just brought that. But one staffer brought in his ceramic chicken and was pleased to have found it, and the other, the staffer brought in some KFC, so I brought them both, and it just kind of happened. But I'm happy that you give me this opportunity to explain it. I've gotten a haircut. I ate roast chicken today, and everything's good in Memphis.
Well, hair looks good. I'm a big fan of KFC. I understand why people attack it, but if it were
And I
cold-
was in Houston this week. And our friend asked about you and had a very good weekend.
Oh, great. Good to hear. Good to hear. Before earlier when I was talking to Anderson, I called you the chicken chomping congressman. I was just playing on that joke. It's always said with respect. You're always welcome on the show. I'm just saying everybody needs to be so aware of keeping the dignity of the institutions right now because there are plenty of people trying to tear them down. Congressman Steve Cohen, you're always welcome.
Thank you, Chris.
Be well.